Welcome back, everybody. We are here once again. Another great interview. Very excited to get this one started. It's been one that I've been trying to get made and done for a little while now. So I'm very happy that we got this set up and I can actually get my guest on tonight. Very busy person. So, I mean, it's just hard to sometimes make schedules work, guys. But I'm glad that we got to do this. And I'm really excited. As you guys know, I've been doing a lot of radio work. So I'm just getting back into the video type of interviews again, which I didn't do for just about a month, because I was, like I said, doing radio and kind of focusing on that. So it's really cool to be back once again doing video interviews. I really enjoy this format. It pretty much just as much as radio. Not quite as much. I'm more of a radio guy. I do like that format a lot. But it's great because if we do a video like this, I can play it on the radio show. So it works out both ways, and I really enjoy doing that. So welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for joining in. Have a great guest with me. So I'm just going to go ahead. I don't want to take too much time babbling at the beginning. So I'm going to go ahead and bring my guest in. We got none other than James Cordiner. And he does have a YouTube channel, Hitchhiker's Guide to the Truth. Very cool content on there. Welcome, James. How are you doing today?
I'm doing well, Rick. How are you, man?
Thanks. Doing great. Glad to finally get you on here. We've been trying for a while, so it's just a schedule thing.
Yeah, for sure. But hey, that's just life, man.
Oh, definitely. And I know we've talked a couple times, not on air, kind of like just chatting. We've had some great chats, and really like your live show that you do and the videos you've done, and I think it's really cool. So I figured let's get you on here and start talking about, the things that we both cover. And I interview a lot of people about the topics that even you talk about, which is natural law. We talk about objective morality, principles, what's going on in the world, why we're in the position that we're in. And I just think those are great topics. So maybe to start, let's kind of bring it back a little bit, James. And how did you get into this? Like, when did this start for you when you started looking into this information and where your journey kind of began?
It's actually it might be a longer story than I even know, because it's something that's been like a part of my life for a very, very long time. I was doing a bunch of this stuff, like the searching and the curiosity was always there, since I was a child. And as far as my respect for authority figures go, I'd never really had any. But it was always this like tug of war match, where it's like the programming is trying to go in and say, you got to listen to these people and these different authority figures. You got to listen to these authority figures. And then I'd be like, well, why? I'd always be, the cliche little kid asking, why? Like that was me. And it never really stopped. And but life has its way, ebb and flow, if you will, of and you kind of, what I mean is I went in and out of this kind of research throughout my life. Since 2005, though, I've been like really like going at a pretty even pace of looking into spirituality and like human consciousness, not really going too hard in the paint with like hardcore research or anything like that, but just like having it be an interest of mine to like look into certain occult practices and everything. So I wouldn't really consider myself too much of a researcher, but just kind of an enthusiast.
Right.
So it's really been almost a good 20 years now that this has been like an active part of my life, to concentrate on my own consciousness, what the spirituality part of all of it, and to try to maybe help others be better, to help myself be better, to treat other people as I would want to be treated. Mm-hmm. You see, that golden rule was instilled in me when I was a child. I grew up in sort of a pseudo-Catholic setting, a pseudo-Christian setting. It wasn't really, we wouldn't really go to church or anything like that, but these values were instilled in me at a very young age. And I was told time and time again when I was growing up, from the time I was about like 5 or 6 years old, my mother would say to me, and really, it's one of the things I'm very grateful to have had instilled in me was she would say when I'd start acting up and being maybe a little bit of a jerk to some other kids or something like that, she would say, now, James, how would you like it if you were treated that way?
Mm.
You should treat people the way that you want to be treated, which in a roundabout way and not so many words is that's the golden rule. Do unto others as you would like to have done unto you. So that was instilled in me at a very, very young age, mixed in with um, ideas of astrology and having a very, very small Native American influence in my life. There's this idea that was also instilled in me, not just about, a certain religious background, but also there's like a deep connection with us as living beings to the earth itself. And certain aspects of Native American traditions were also introduced to me at a very young age due to other family members of mine. And also the ideas of astrology were introduced to me at a very young age. So there's always been this idea of something bigger and something really great out there in the universe that kind of makes things happen,
Right.
that kind of dictates how things go. Not necessarily a God figure, not necessarily what you would see, depicted as a God figure, a man sitting in a chair in the clouds, that kind of cliche type of thing.
Mm-hmm.
It was always just presented to me as like the Force. Like, it sounds like Star Wars, right? But hey, I also, I also, funnily, like as funny as it seems, I grew up watching a lot of science fiction as well, and
Mm-hmm.
you know, my dad would watch science fiction movies with me, and we would talk about them and everything like that. And there were certain connections made where it's like, actually, you know what, like, what if it's like this, and how cool would that be if that were real, and fun stuff that
Yeah.
kids to do. And but anyways, yeah, I mean, so as far as like how long I've been doing research, it almost feels like my entire life, little by little. Nothing crazy like, oh, I will, like nothing like, oh my God, I'm some guy that knows everything. Like, no, I would never ever consider myself to be somebody like that.
Right.
But having said that, I do know the life that I've lived, and the ideas that were presented to me, and the different. I was basically from a very young age told to be open minded, and to try to always think about things before you draw a conclusion on them. And that I was also told from a very young age, you won't know anything until you're 30. And that was like always odd to me.
Mm-hmm.
And then come to find out throughout my research on astrology and how the planets work and everything like that, it's about that same time in your life where Saturn comes back around and is in the same place that it was in the sky with the day you were born. And it's about 28 to 30 years from the time that you were born. Saturn's in the same position. It comes right back. It does its whole revolution around the sun.
Right.
And it's like, wow, that's kind of weird. I wonder if they knew about that. And like by the time I was 30, the person who kind of came up with that as a saying in our family had passed away. So I never really got a chance to ask her, like, why did you start saying that to everybody? Why did you do like? And she didn't tell my father or my stepmother why she said that. I asked them because they were the ones that would say it to me. I asked them, like, why did Susan say that? And they were like, well, we don't really know. We never asked. And I was like, oh, damn it. And too bad, because I really loved Susan, and she passed away. I think right around the time I was 28 years old. I was a younger man, and I didn't get to 30 with her to ask her. But I figured it out on my own a little bit. But she was always into really, really good stuff, like, you know. So yeah, I mean, I hope that answers that question for you.
Oh, definitely. Yeah, that was great. I was because I always like asking people that because I think of my journey kind of, and it parallels in some ways because I kind of grew up in a Christian family too, technically, I guess we were Christian. We were one of those families that never really went to church either. Like, I mean, I don't think I ever saw my mom or dad even open a Bible, to be honest. But for some reason, they brought. I always ask my mom, and she doesn't really ever give me a great answer. I think that her answer is basically, from what I can tell, is that she did it because a lot of other people were doing it, is what I can tell. And because we maybe went on like Christmas Mass or something, my mom would go and we would go for that. And I think that's what she thought. But we never went every Sunday. We never read the Bible together, so we never did that. But I did do 8 years. My first 8 years of schooling were in a Catholic school, and I just remember me questioning the priest and a lot. I was somebody that was always asking questions, so it kind of reminds me of you, like when you just said that you were somebody that asked a lot of questions, like the why. I was like that too, getting in trouble for it constantly because I found out very quickly that they don't like when you question the teachings a lot of the times, because I found out later in life they can't answer a lot of it. I mean, when you start asking the tough questions, even the priest would look at me and say, "You just have to believe. It's in the Bible. You just have to believe." But I would want to know more. So I mean, I was kind of like you, even at a young age, and always looking for knowledge, which has led me. I'm sure even probably with you, it kind of led me all over. I've looked into so many different things in this journey. Now, Nostradamus was one. I kind of looked into that for a while, and then I would kind of look into, and then I would, as soon as I got online, I started finding a lot of other teachers. Were you somebody, James, that questioned a lot even in school and that? Like, I know you kind of said that you were, but were you like I was always questioning the priest and driving him crazy. Like, he just did not like the fact that I was even questioning religion in a way. So I just wonder if you were kind of that way.
Well, I never. So to start, I want to let you know I never went to any sort of. Not that I. For some reason, I think I went to like a kindergarten that was like religious. I remember nuns being there.
Okay.
And I'm not positive about that. It might have been. I don't know. It might have been one of those weird little kid memories that kind of get hazy and you kind of mash
Right.
together.
Yeah.
I do remember very, very like very vividly. And I've told this story before, and I'll tell you this story today. When I was a young man, I was in I think I was about 5 or 6 years old. I just kind of started public school, and it was the reading. It was like a rug in the classroom, and all around the border of the rug, there were strips of duct tape, and each kid had their name written on that strip of duct tape. And that is your place to sit at when it's story time. So everybody is sitting around the border of this rug, and the teacher is kind of like, I don't know, probably at like the 12 o'clock position, and all the kids are sitting around the rug. And it didn't make sense to me. I wanted to sit down next to this little girl. I guess I was crushing on her at the time. Whatever. And I was a bit of a ladies' man when I was whatever. Who cares? But and I didn't understand why I couldn't sit down next to her.
Right.
Because the teacher would say, "That's not your spot. Your spot's over there on the other side of the rug." And I remember looking at the teacher and saying, like, "I'm gonna sit down. I want to sit down here. Why does it matter where I sit?
Mm-hmm.
I'm still sitting down for your story. I want to learn. I want to know what the hungry caterpillar is, but I want to sit here. I don't understand." And she was like, "Well, that's not where your name is. Your name is over there on the other side of the rug." Mm-hmm. And I was like, "That doesn't make any sense." And it's just kind of a a snowball going down the mountain from there when it comes to questioning authority.
Yep.
And like I have throughout my life always had trouble, like always had this instinctual response to push back against authority. Mm-hmm. It's always been there, and I've never let anybody program that out of me. I've always even if I've been quiet, even if I've always had the problem with it. I've always inside, even if I were a little kid knowing that I didn't have much pull and I went along with it, on the inside, it always made me feel terrible.
Right.
I always knew that there was something wrong about just blindly doing what you were told. And it was like very young that the first time I remember that actually being a problem. And from there, I'm a high school dropout, not even a high school dropout. The last grade that I officially passed was 8th grade. in
Really?
America. And I dropped out. I stayed back twice. They held me back twice, and I dropped out. And I said, you know what? I don't need this shit. And I got out of there. They labeled me. They got me on ADHD medication when I was about 8 or 9 years old. And this is how much trouble I had participating and being a part of their little machine in the public school setting. So they had to drug me into compliance, and that
Wow.
happens to millions and millions of kids
Yep.
every single year in this country. And it's an absolute disgusting shame
Mm-hmm.
that parents would let their kids get put on drugs. That, and I'm not saying that there isn't a child out there that may benefit from it,
Right.
but I dare, I always just push back and I ask the burning question of how legitimate is it to have all of those kids on it? Like how many kids actually need to be on it, or how many kids are just on it because they're not fitting into your artificial educational setting,
Right. Yep.
So it's like, because I was that kid. I was that kid that had no problem learning stuff. I had no problem being interested in things. But when you try to shove something down my throat that I don't want or that I'm not prepared for, and you expect me to fall in line, I'm going to push back against that. It's been a part of my life forever.
Wow.
So, and then, so that's how a lot of that kind of stuff happens. So,
You're very true when you say that too, because I think that that's what they do to a lot of kids. Is that if you're not going along with the program, and I'd like to ask you, I'm quite sure I know your thoughts on the schooling system, but I'd like to actually ask you a little bit about it because I've interviewed quite a few people about the public school system and the schooling system in general, how unnatural it is a way to learn that way. And I kind of was kind of like you. I was very hyperactive as a child. I was like go 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 go. I went constantly. I mean, I feel bad actually for my parents because I wore them out. Like I was one of those people, and I know James for a fact. If I was a child now with those traits, they would be medicating me. I know it because even back at, and we're talking like 40 years ago, that I was that hyperactive, and they were talking to my mom about medicating me back then. And my mom and thank God, I thank them so much. My mom and dad finally said, no, we're just going to let him run it out, kind of, and let him just go do his own thing. We don't want to medicate him. I thank them every time I talk to them about that because who knows where I would have been if I would have been drugged at that young age. I don't know. I just know that I was very hyperactive. And they would have definitely, they were trying to drug me. They were trying to say I needed to be calmed down and stuff. And thank God, like I said, my parents let me kind of run it out and figure it out. But I definitely see where you're coming from because it's a very, for me, and I want to get your thoughts, James, it's a very unnatural way to learn when you put somebody in a school, like in a classroom, and then, for an hour you got math, and then for an hour you got history, then an hour you got geography. I mean, how much can you learn? It's such an unnatural way. So I just want to and I know it's an unnatural way because I talked to a lot of people and they agree with it. Like, it's really a weird, I know why they're doing it, but what are your thoughts on the way they're teaching children now? And like, would you homeschooling? Like, what are your thoughts on the whole schooling topic?
well, I first of all want to give attention to something that you just said.
Okay.
Nobody's perfect, and
Yep.
we all have things that we disagree with our parents and with the way that they bring us up, and that's the whole point, is that we're developing our own way and self-actualizing. But when it really counts, it's up to the parents to step up to the plate and do the right thing.
Hmm.
And I commend your parents for doing that.
Thank you.
That's a very brave thing for them to do, is to stare down the face of that and say no.
Yeah.
And that's when through any faults of theirs, they stepped up and did the right thing when it really, really, really mattered.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of things that in life when you're defending your kids where you got to stand up and say no, and when it really matters, there's a lot of those moments, and they picked a moment to do the right thing, and I really applaud them for that. So
Cool.
good on you, good on you, Crypt Rick Senior, Crypt Rick's mom,
Grip Rick Mom. Yeah, it was
uh,
incredible. Yeah.
Mr. and Mrs. Crypt Rick's parents.
Yeah. It was,
So,
yeah. I mean, like I said, I thank them all the time for that because I really don't know what would have happened. I can't, there's no way to tell that. But I do
right.
know my mom talking to me even about it. She was like, they want to put you on these meds and they might, it's going to calm you down. And then and at that young age, I'm like, whatever, doctor knows best kind of thing. And then my mom and dad are like, let us talk about it. And then I remember a couple days later they came back and said, "Don't worry about it. We're not putting you on these meds. Just do your thing." And that was the end of it. And then I'm sure that they got flack from the school and the teachers, but they never told me about it. So, but I'm sure they did because they went kind of against the whole program. And I was like, I was kind of like one of those kids in school. I was bouncing around, and I just didn't. I could learn, but it had to be something I was interested in, and the way they teach was so unnatural to me. I'm like, I don't like certain things you're just not interested in, and I just think we waste so much time trying to hit these markers that really in the long run don't matter, and at that point in time, at that such a young age, I think there's better things that we could be teaching our kids, and they're going to kind of learn as they go and need to know that. So I just want your thoughts. I just think the whole schooling system is such a mess and destructive in a lot of ways.
It's corrupt,
Yeah,
and it's literally it's robbing children of their innocence and
absolutely.
and their imaginations. It's constructed literally to do that. At least I'm not in the public school right now. My children aren't, and I don't have much involvement with them. But I can't imagine that it's changed so drastically as to not be to not be serving that function.
Hmm.
And I want to say that, like, it's a really tough thing for people to homeschool children these days because of how easy they make it and how they have really infiltrated people's consciousness into thinking that both parents need the job and this
Yep.
and that and everything, and like this has become a way of life for a lot of people.
Hmm.
And I understand the struggle of stepping away from the machine. I understand that struggle. And I'm here to say that it is very difficult, and we all do the best that we can do. However, you need to stand up and protect your children. And these people are exposing your children to I mean, everyone, in my opinion, every person at some point in time in their life or another, they're going to be exposed to violence.
Hmm.
It's unfortunate that most people in this day and age, it seems as though most people, when they're exposed to violence for the first time, it takes place in a foreign setting such as a public school.
Yep.
And that takes place when they're very, very young. And the people that are meant to be the stewards of these children, the protectors, are nowhere to be found. The problem is that parents think that they can rely on the state to be responsible for their children in their stead, while mom and dad are at work making the money and being the tax slave. The children are at school learning how to fill those shoes for when mom and dad retire. The whole entire system is set up to make it this revolving door of slavery.
Yep.
It is government school, and what the government is teaching you is obedience to government. They're not going to teach you the things that you need to know in order to be a self-actualized person, because that is what they fear the most. A person that doesn't need them. And if there's enough people that don't need them, then they are rendered obsolete. And then people wake up and realize how they've been duped, and they won't. And hopefully, the reaction to that will be a peaceful resolution where they say, "We're not taking this shit anymore," and it starts with speech, and we see where it goes from there. And I really, really, really do not want to see the eventuality of that,
Right.
which is why I speak out. Because speech is the most non-violent means of rendering that control structure obsolete.
That's true.
Waking people up, raising people's consciousness to a level where they can understand how they've been taken advantage of by a group of people that want nothing else but to control every facet of their lives. They don't care about us. We are numbers to them. We are a battery to them. And that's that. And the public school is where they teach the kids that. They don't teach you how to, like I said, and I'll say it again, they do not teach you how to self-actualize. They teach you what they want you to know so you can be a nice, obedient little slave and do what you're told. Then that's that. That's the long and short of it.
Yep.
It's a very unnatural setting. It's something called outcome-based education, where they already know how you're going to turn out at the end. They're just nudging you down the path as you go. So,
and taking away that, like you said, even your creativity, because I was always somebody that was an artist. From the time I can remember, I was drawing and painting. And I remember in school, they would ask me, like, what do you want? Every person's heard this in school. What do you want to do for a living? And, everybody goes down the row. I want to be a doctor. I want to be a lawyer.
I want to
astronaut, fireman. And I was like, I want to be an artist. And I just remember the teacher going, oh, Rick, there's no money in that.
Yeah.
How are you going to support yourself on that? And really discouraging it, like to the point where I was like, wow, like making me feel like bad because I wanted to be an artist. And now that I look back, because I got, hindsight's 2020, I'm thinking, what a crock of shit that this teacher was laying down thick on me. It's like, wow, like people make, see, but then they put it because it's always this money thing, James. They look at it as that's what's going to, you got to get a job like what I mentioned, because you're going to make a lot of money and you're going to supposedly be happy because you have all this money and you get all these things. And, but not realizing it's completely flipped. I think that if people were doing what they love to do, what they're passionate about, if you're an artist, if you're a dancer, whatever it is, and then you can find a way to make a living out of that, you may not have as much money in some cases, but you're living a way happier life, because you look at people that are doing the 9 to 5, and it's even becoming worse than 9 to 5 now. Some people working 17, 18-hour, 20-hour shifts now. It's not even a 9 to 5, so it's breaking the family up even more, which we can get into if you want, how they're breaking the family up even more. But I just think that you make a great point that that's one thing they do is destroy the creativity and then have this unnatural way of learning. I just still remember the teacher telling me that they were like, what a crazy notion that I want to be an artist. And I just think if they let people focus in at that young age, and I agree, they're not making anything, they're not teaching principles, they're not teaching critical thinking, that is not what they want. They don't want free thinkers they want, like you said, people that are just going to learn and take the programming in, and then what they get turned out at the end, they already know what you're going to turn out, like you said, at the end. So that's what they want. They don't want free thinkers or people, they're not teaching these things. Right. And then they take away the creativity. And I just think if they were, like, imagine if teachers were teaching, like, do what you love, what you're passionate about, and what a difference it would make, just that alone.
Right. And it's not so much that they're completely demolishing the creative mind. It's that they're setting up these roadblocks or boundaries. Right. They're saying, here's a room. The metaphor of a room, mm-hmm. right? And within this room, you are free to move around. So they're setting up a cage for your imagination,
right?
Where they're saying just that. You have limits to your imagination, and we're the ones that are putting those boundaries in place. And we're going to nurture your imagination in a way where the outcome that we already have in mind for somebody like you that's the outcome that's going to be fulfilled.
Yep.
It's not letting a person actually use their free will to self-actualize, to see where this thing called life takes them according to their own will, their own right to tread down that path with courage. They put those boundaries in place, and it's disgusting. And I really do try to encourage everybody to push back as much as they can. And it all starts, like, if you can't get your child out of public education, don't ever let them tell you that your child needs to be put on drugs. Be like Rick's parents. Be like, fuck you, no.
Yep.
Make the system bend to your will. Because if we really are a place, if America really is a republic by the people, then that's what they're supposed to do, isn't it?
Yeah.
But time and time again throughout your life, you look back, and if you actually be honest with yourself for 1 second, you'd realize that it's all a farce,
Yep.
and that every single turn that they have been standing there going, nope, you're going to do what we say, and it's like, isn't it supposed to be the other way around?
Right.
Oh, so it
Yeah.
all starts with speech and courage. And if you really know that it's not going to happen now to pull your kid out of public school, then do, then do your part to change how the thing is going on.
Yeah.
And eventually, and then raise your kids and be like, I don't want you to be in public school, but we don't have a choice. And then get that into their heads so that they get to a point where it's, because that's kind of where I was, where I'm at. I went to public school. I don't want my kids going there. I didn't have the option to stay home, but I think that if I did, I probably wouldn't have been at public school now, would I?
That's right.
you
Yeah.
know, but
It's a tough one. I get it. I get it. I mean, that's why I'm glad that we're kind of talking about this, James, because a lot of people say to me, okay, I get what you're saying, Rick. I hear you and I agree with you, but let's talk about real world. Like what's happening in the, like, how do you implement this in the real world? And that's where it kind of gets tricky because there is consequences to doing these things. It takes courage to do it, and there may be suffering involved in the process of you doing the right thing. There, you might have to give up some of your fancy things, or you might have to make some sacrifices. And are you willing to do that for your kids? That's, to me, that's the question. What are you willing to sacrifice? But I get it's not as simple as just saying it, because like we were saying, like, some parents, both of them are working, which I think we both can agree that it's all by design. I think they want the family broken up, and they've done a great job, because even over my life, when I was going to school, it was very rare, and I can only speak for myself, and I always say this, that it was very rare. Like when I was going to school, it was very rare that there wasn't both parents in the house, and I can only speak for the group of people I was around and neighbors. But both parents were in the house, and if one child, one of my friends, one of their parents, they got divorced, and it was just the one parent. It was kind of like weird back then, like, wow, you only got one parent, or where's your other parent? It was kind of a weird thing.
right.
Now that's completely opposite.
Oh,
It's,
you have 2 Christmases?
yeah, basically, yeah. You got
Yeah.
two Christmases. You're
Well,
lucky. That's how kids think. Yeah,
like, hey, Billy, Tommy's got 2 fucking Christmases. What the hell? I wish I had 2 Christmases. And
yeah.
Tommy's like sitting there like, no, you don't.
Yeah, exactly. And but it was really, and now it's kind of abnormal that there is two parents in the house in a lot of cases. And then what's really frustrating, I think, for me and you and a lot of other people, is we see that how they're divided, like they're destroying and attacking the family, and then in turn they're attacking, the child, because then, I mean, it trickles down to the child, because then you have to put your child into the education system, because you got two parents trying to work these jobs just to make ends meet. It's a tough thing, I think, for parents, and it's a tough thing to work out. But what are your thoughts? I mean, to me, it just seems like, what are you willing to give up? Are you willing to give up a lot of your fancy things and maybe have one parent at home and the other? I don't know. It's a great discussion. What do you think? Like, how do we change this dynamic, because they do have us in this box where both parents seem to have to be out of the house working just to put food on the table, pay their bills. How do they go about?
Well, I'll say this, that co-parenting does exist, and
Right.
when done correctly, it can be a very amazing thing. So parents don't necessarily need to be together. I have a very good friend, and you know him as well. I'm not gonna name him here on the air, but he talks about this from time to time on the air. I'll just say Will Keller.
Mm-hmm.
He is open about being in a co-parenting situation, and he and his the mother of his child, they have a very good a good relationship in terms of co-parenting.
Right.
Like, this is how he's explained it, and it is possible, and you see a lot of that happening. Then that's another point of, and this all comes back to one idea, that sacrifice is involved. There is a level of sacrifice that's involved to make sure that these kids these days are getting raised properly, and to be raised to understand voluntary consensual relationships, the nonviolence principle. I stopped calling it the non-aggression principle. Thank you to Brandon Martin. he kind of schooled me on that at one time. He's like, I think we should stop calling it the non-aggression principle because of the idea of aggression. You kind of need to be aggressive when you're defending yourself. So if we have these two ideas, it almost seems contradictory to one another. So why don't we call it the non-violence principle?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I'm down with that. Makes
Makes
sense.
sense.
So yeah, nonviolence and self-defense, these things need to be instilled in people and taught thoroughly, and to be able to have the children understand it at a very young age. And you don't necessarily need to have both parents in the same house.
Right.
What you need is you need to have both parents on the same level. You need to have them on the same level of consciousness and understanding of what is really going on here. What is really going on. And it's a full-scale attack on people's ability to be autonomous.
Mm-hmm.
And they go after the kids first because it's just the next. You can get them when they're young. They're very impressionable, and that's children are, I would say, the most defenseless versions of humans that exist.
Yeah.
And that's why you see such an aggressive, such a violent attack on children these days, and so that's what I would say about two parents in the house. You gotta be able to get along with the other parent of your child.
Right.
You gotta at least be able to get along for the sake of what the child needs. If your personal relationship with that other person is starting to get in the way of benefiting the child, you really gotta take a deep breath, step back, and see what you can do to change how you're interacting with that person, because and that's a point of sacrifice that a lot of people struggle to make because of their egos. They get in the way, and and ego can be a pretty powerful force.
I agree.
And so people need to learn how to get control of that shit and not let it ruin the child's ability to form good relationships of their own, because that's the first example of a relationship that a child sees is the relationship between the parents.
Yeah. That's so true. And then I think about too, like I always wondered, like, and something that always made me curious too, growing up, James, is I always think about like what makes people turn. I'm very interested in why people turn out the way they do. If you know what I mean. Like what made them go down that path, like to get to where they are. And then I'm not just saying in a bad way, like. I'm saying, like, why did they want to become a politician? Why did they want to become a police officer? Why? And I think about what led them down that path, and I just think a lot of it is parents that aren't conscious, and not teaching the right things. Despite the fact that they got their children in the schooling system, which is bad enough, and then you have parents that aren't educated and aren't teaching, principles, and they're not teaching. Objective morality. They're not teaching critical thinking, and then so I wonder, like, what leads people to become an order follower? Like, why do they even go down that path? Maybe a lot of abandonment issues in a way because their parents aren't around as much and they're kind of left to the state. And I just always wondered, like, because it's really curious because you have so many people that are that are in military, they're in government, they're in these roles that are they're just order followers, and they're not really using any of their own thinking in this process. So I just find that really I've always been fascinated how people get led down that path, and I'm just wondering what you like. Do you think it's just it starts at a young age, and then it's the absent parenting or lack of parenting that kind of lead them down this path?
Yeah, I would absolutely agree with that. And you're putting them into an indoctrination camp. At the same time. So when you're, as far as abandonment issues go, where the subconscious mind is capable of amazing things, of interpreting things in very amazing ways. When you're essentially, how it really seems to be going is that my cats are running amok. I'm sorry.
I'm loving it. He's
Oh my God. Anyways, like what I was saying is that when you're putting your kid into the government schools, that is a form of physical abandonment.
mm-hmm.
Okay. And by default, when you're physically abandoning your child, the emotional and spiritual abandonment are tied right to it.
Yeah.
Now, it comes in many different ways. There's many different ways to go about doing these types of abandonment, but when physical abandonment is involved, of course, the other two or all the other types of abandonment by default are there as well.
Yeah. Your cats are having a great time behind you.
Yeah. And so what's going on here is with the order followers and the politicians and the order givers and the order followers are created through this indoctrination into this cult. It's a religion of statism, and through the public schools you're being indoctrinated into it, and you're being taught that these things are necessary.
Yep.
And then what goes on is the whole system turns right around and preys on these people that are suffering from these abandonment issues, and they take that trauma and they use it to create these loyal dog order followers.
Yep.
And it's maddening, and they have this self-perpetuating kind of I don't know what you would call it. I just call it a machine where it just churns them out every generation,
Mm-hmm.
where people think that this thing called government needs to exist, and that it's absolutely necessary.
Yep.
And of course, there's always going to be factions of people that band together who know how to get things done and know how to organize things and know how to like organize groups and people and stuff like that. There's going to be people that are good like that. There's going to be people that are good at things like that. That is a skill, to be able to organize a group and say, in this group we have a mission, and that mission is to do this job to make sure that we all live, that we all live in a decent place,
Mm-hmm.
and that we're going to go out and we're going to put some real elbow grease into our communities and make sure that we all live in a nice place. Like, there's nothing wrong with that. But when you have this cult, like I've heard it be called like the cult of ultimate evil,
Yep.
and it's really, really damning for all of us, because it's like I said at the beginning, they don't care about us. They don't
Absolutely.
have they're not required to. They're a corporation. They don't care about us. They care about their bottom line.
Mm-hmm.
They care about the overhead of the whole situation. How much is it going to cost just to turn the lights on? You know what I mean? That's what they care about. They care about numbers. And we're all just producing for them. They're plundering through their taxes, and it's just a disgusting system, and it all starts with the public schools, you know. And then they have it's very soft. You don't even realize that it's going on, but they target in certain individuals who they they're masters of psychology.
Mm-hmm.
They're absolute masters of psychology. They know who to target for certain positions in their order, to make sure that on the other side of the whole outcome based education model, that certain positions will be filled. So they prey upon people from a very young age, and they exploit people. They exploit people's shortcomings,
Yep.
and they say you're fine just the way you are, when it might be like, no, you're not. You got to do some work. And they're like, no, 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 you're fine just the way you are, because you're going to turn out to be somebody who is going to be like just fine with slapping the handcuffs on some innocent person that's never done a goddamn thing wrong in their life. And you're going to be fine just, being that person. You're going to be fine going to the state house. You're going to be just fine being this person that can just turn off all sorts of all the empathy and all the sympathy that it requires to actually be a human being. And you'll be able to go and write all these arbitrary laws, all these things that don't make any sense, that can be changed at a whim, just as quickly as it is to just sign a name on a piece of paper. These things can be changed, and you're going to be that person that's cold, calculated, and doesn't give a shit about anybody else. And that's that. And all the while, they're tricking people into thinking that it's the exact opposite way. of how I just laid it out.
Yeah, that's the genius part of the way they do it, is that they invert it and then they sell it back to us as a good thing. And then people buy it too. That's another crazy part. Like they invert it and then sell it back to us. And then people actually get invested in it. And I've been somebody that's never kind of I always was questioning, like when I can remember my whole life, like why do people have some people have the right to make these laws? Like where like I've always wondered, where does this all come from? Like who gave them the right to be writing these laws, and then I have to follow them? Like, and I didn't have words for it, but when I was like learning about this stuff, I didn't know what it was called, but I knew something was wrong. Like I knew there was some trouble going on. I was like, this doesn't make any sense. And why are people just blindly following these orders? And despite whether or not they know it's right or wrong, they still follow these orders, and it's crazy. So it's always made me really interested in what kind of mindset does this, because I know I couldn't be one of those people that are doing are enslaving people or even be part of something like that. I wouldn't be able to sleep at night, to be honest. I really wouldn't, because it would just bother me that much. I just know it's so wrong. But I talk to a lot of people, and I'm sure you do, James, that you say, like, can you imagine a world without government? And they can't see it. They really can. And I try to explain to people how, and they get really defensive, but they've really got people believing that the world would just fall apart without government running it. And I think that that's one of their greatest deceptions too. That we need them, and that's they force us to believe that the media, so-called media that you hear about, they're promoting this whole lie too, and it's just this really evil shit they're doing. And I just do you get that too with a lot of people? Because I talk about government a lot and what it would be like without it, and how things would look, and people just can't see it. The people I talk to, a lot of the people that don't know the information we know, they can't see it.
Yeah, the claws of statism are dug very, very deep within these people,
Yeah.
and it's a very, very difficult job to take that on and to try to find the thing that's going to at least get the ball rolling with just the idea that how they think of government might not be correct,
Mm-hmm.
because that's where it all starts. And that's why speech is so important. That's why speaking up about this stuff is just so goddamn important. And it all starts there with a conversation. And it might be very, very difficult to do. It's a very uncomfortable thing.
Yep.
Truth is very, very uncomfortable. That's the problem, is people get really uncomfortable when they're met with hard truths.
Mm-hmm.
And when especially when it's like your whole life has been a lie, and you're in a cult, and you're in a cult.
Yeah.
And then the same people that subscribe to this cult, they don't even realize it. And I guess that's like how it's supposed to be, right? Or else it wouldn't work for
It
the,
wouldn't work.
But yeah, I mean, I get tremendous pushback from people that, I mean, we always want to go to our families first, because there's that familial bond.
Mm-hmm.
Where you go and say, I care about these people. I am of them. So I want to go for them first. And it's like, this may be the greatest mistake of any truth speaker, is that they go for their family first. When you start waking up, you want to bring those who you care about the most with you.
Yep.
And this is the most disheartening thing, is when they push back and then you just want to give up, because if you can't wake up your family, what's the use? But you got to keep going. You got to keep pushing, because it's like the more people that wake up, the better. The more people that stay active, and it's not about, maybe you make a YouTube video every now and then about the progress of your garden, or how you're able to fix up your house by yourself and not have to worry about, hiring some company who's gonna bend you over the barrel and take advantage of you and drain you of all your savings. Even though money's really not the most important thing, it's still a thing.
Yep.
It's still a thing that exists. and it's a medium of exchange. However, which way you want to look at it, as illegitimate as it is, all the different ways that you could explain the monetary system that we have, it still exists, and it's still the thing that everyone recognizes. So it exists based on consent of the people,
Yep.
and I mean that's a large portion of what's going on here, is that they've tricked people into giving them consent. So it's like we live in voluntarism now. It's just a lot of people have their head in the sand and they're voluntarily giving up a lot of things. You can't. Let's see. The thing is that like everybody talks about taking the power back, and it's like you never really gave it up. You were just tricked into thinking you aren't as powerful as you really are.
Very
Power
true.
exists within you in all places at all times. You have the ability to make choices. You have free will. You have an ability to use it. It's just you've been tricked into thinking that you're not going to make a difference, that you're just one person, that you're a speck, that you're what can one person do? One person can do a whole hell of a lot. They can
Absolutely.
do a whole hell of a lot of good,
Yep.
and they can make a difference, you know? And that's really what I'm all about. That's really what I really want to like tell people, is that this whole idea that you can't really make a difference, so you might as well just go along to get along, is a load of bullshit. And that you have the ability to make conscious choices of what to do with your actions. And if you're doing wrong action, you're the one responsible for it. You're the one who's going to be morally culpable for that. So you better get right. You better fucking act right. Excuse me. I don't know if
Yeah, go
cuss.
ahead.
I'm sorry for cussing. I don't. This isn't my show. I just get kind of worked up.
No, I understand.
Um, but like that's my whole point. You know, and I like reminding people of that because you don't hear it. I don't hear it put down like that very often, where it's like, no, we live in voluntarism now. So it's not about reaching a place of voluntarism. Where we're at now is we need to be abolitionists. We need to recognize that we're living in a system of slavery that has been constructed through the consent of the people that are in the shackles.
Absolutely.
So where we're at now is we need to readjust our argument and say just that. We're in slavery. We're in monetary slavery, slavery by government, whatever you want to call it. It's still a system of slavery, and that's wrong. And we need to break those shackles and be free. And we have the free will to make certain choices every single day of our lives that will produce a better outcome for the future.
Yep.
We can leave the past where it is. That's where it is. There's no changing it. We can learn from it. I'm not saying ignore the past. I'm saying don't dwell on it. Don't go, oh, I'm going to beat myself up over something I have no power to change.
Right.
Instead, learn from those mistakes and make a better tomorrow. I always quote Hyacinth Voisin. He said, and this quote is attributed to Hyacinth Voisin, and he said, "Blessed are those who plant seeds for trees under whose shade they will not sit." And it's all about the future, baby. It's all about making a better future, So, I mean, that's really where we're at. Is we really need to readjust how we really speak about these topics, because we need to be abolitionists. That's where we need to make an adjustment. And a lot of people, like it or not, are falling short.
I agree. And a lot of people, I think, too, take it, and I was guilty of this for the longest time, too, was taking in the information and kind of thinking that that was enough. Like, okay, I understand I'm getting a good picture of what's going on. I owe a lot to that to Mark Passio. He kind of, when I discovered his podcast and all his presentations, he really put that tapestry together for me. I always describe it as I had all the pieces of the puzzle kind of scattered around, and Mark kind of put everything together to where I was like, okay, this is how it all comes together and makes sense. And that was a big game changer for me. Just kind of having somebody be able to do that for me. And what I just I think it's going to be a tough one because I think people think that even if they are taking in the information, that's enough. Like they kind of know what's going on. As I was saying, they get a good they got a good grasp of it at least, and then they don't do the action afterwards in trying to get the information out like I'm doing and you're doing and a lot of other great people are doing. But there could be more. So do you not see that we need more people, right, doing what we're doing is what I think I'm trying to say. There's a lot of people I think know what's going on. They're either too scared to come out to talk about it. I'm not sure what they're. I'm sure my reason was I just I was scared to kind of talk about it, and I used the excuse of I didn't know tech very well. Which guys, I still don't know very well. I'm learning every day, but I'm making a lot of mistakes along the way, and I freely admit that. But I'm learning a lot more than I did a year ago, especially taking Mark Passio's class. I learned a lot this year, so I'm definitely learning. But that was my excuse. I was like I didn't know the tech side of it. So we got to stop making the excuses and start doing the work and getting out there in whatever way you're good at. I'm not saying that's to be done this way, but people that know this knowledge have to start putting it out.
Yeah, and you know, I know Mark really pushes for people to use technology. It's something that he's very enthusiastic about.
Yeah.
And I tend to agree with him. However, from looking at it, I do push back a little bit, and I say, you know what? Maybe not everybody is meant to be putting their work out on the internet. Yeah, it's a great platform to be able to use, and to make, little videos and upload them and everything like that. And I think it is important for people to know the basics of that, of this technology, because it exists and it's a very good, useful tool. And and we are in a war. We're in a spiritual war. And on this battlefield, this is where the war is being waged. This is the age of it. As much as I might not like the hyperbolized nature of this man, Alex Jones, he really got a good name for his show. It's an information war. And where is that information war being waged? It's being waged on the internet. So if we're going to push back and expect to really make a decent change, we need to be able to come onto the battlefield of the internet and push back. They're using technology as a means of total control, and we need to be active in pushing back against that. And you can't do that without using the technology that they are also using, So, and to that extent, yeah, like we should be doing it, but doesn't mean that you have to be the one. Like maybe you have a friend who's really good at it and they're able to be like your producer or something, or But I mean, if the shit really hits the fan and all of this goes down in a ball of flames, wouldn't you feel a little more comfortable in your surroundings, knowing that you at least reached out to the people in your community, right, that you're able to so this is the whole point of, and I don't know if everybody really thinks it through this way, but the whole idea of many hands making light work is like, yeah, maybe there is a lot of people doing this stuff and being proactive in their communities, and they're just not taping it and putting it on YouTube. We don't know.
Good point.
I don't know. Maybe saying we don't know is a bit of a stretch. I know that I don't know. I know I live in a decent community where people seem to get along and no one really fucks with each other. And I say that because in an armed society, armed society equals polite society.
Yeah.
And
true.
So there's another point to be made, but I mean, there's many different avenues to explore when it comes to how this battle is being waged in this spiritual warfare that we're going through at this current time. And part of it does exist on a community level, where the people that you are living next door to, or the people that if you're going down to the market, the people that you're sharing that space with, you want to know that they're not going to be violent people if the shit hits the fan.
Yeah.
So I mean, you got to be able to operate on a local level, act locally, think globally. Act in the microcosm and understand, the principle of correspondence, in that your actions and the effect that you have in your immediate surroundings is the microcosm, and that will have an effect on the macrocosm. And if everybody can get along with that idea, then I mean, it kind of eventually, that's the whole idea of like the speech being the most important thing and speaking out being the most important thing and the most nonviolent means to actually, change the world for the better. Because I'm not about violence. I don't want it to be some bloody thing, but I'm
Yeah,
prepared.
me neither.
I'm prepared to defend myself, my children, my wife, the people that mean the world to me. I am prepared to defend them up to and including my own death. And I am not afraid of death. I would be really bummed out for the things I might miss if I were to leave this place, but I'm not afraid of death. And if somebody wants to come at us, and if at least I know I went down fighting, and I mean, for real, you gotta act in so many different ways. So if you are a podcaster, if you are somebody who considers themselves to be awake and enlightened and conscious, all these different ways to go about saying it, it's all the same. But I mean, if you are putting content out on the internet, print out a flyer. Print out a short stack of flyers. Go around your neighborhood. Maybe put one up on a telephone pole or at your market on the corkboard that exists at the entranceway to your town market or something like that. Get the people in your community aware that there's this dude that lives somewhere around here who's on the internet talking about this stuff. Let's kind of mold those two ideas together, and like. So like I don't think I necessarily full-heartedly disagree with Mark Passio with his enthusiastic approach to getting people activated on and using the internet as a means of communicating this information. But I also want to make sure that the idea is that not the idea, but the method of reaching out to your community is also being equally as stressed.
Right.
Because like I keep saying, if the shit hits the fan, you're going to need these people around you or else you're going to be in trouble. If you can survive on your own in the middle of the woods someplace, good for you. That's awesome. I wish that were me. I really do.
It's not me.
I really do. I wish I had that confidence. If I were alone, I'm not.
Maybe, yeah.
I'm not alone, but if I were alone, it would be a whole hell of a lot easier.
Yeah.
But I got mouths to feed. And
so true.
And it's like I need to know that my neighbors aren't going to gang up on me or something. And I'm not a scumbag. I don't worry about that stuff. Let's say we wake up tomorrow and like a light switch, the whole control system's just been shut off.
Okay.
I would almost at this point prefer that, to be honest. Yeah.
Yeah, why is that?
Because if it doesn't go that way, the eventual outcome on the path that we're all kind of being forced to go down, in my opinion, it leads to complete and total slavery. We're at a 90% slavery at this point, in my opinion. If you want to put it on a scale like that, in my opinion, we still have a lot of things that we are able to do. We're still able to get away with in the eyes of the law, man's law, which is arbitrary in its own right, in its own way, but they don't actively pursue people. You don't get I don't know. I'm kind of trailing off here, but
they're not banging on our doors quite yet.
Not quite yet.
We're close though.
Very. And I would almost prefer to wake up in a world tomorrow where it is chaos, because I would at least be able to defend myself and not have to I guess have to answer to anybody that would want to challenge whether or not I was defending myself, because I'm a principled man.
Mm-hmm.
And I know and understand these principles. And I know that if I were taking those types of actions, that I would be doing it right. And so that's kind of my point.
Right.
Of that part.
It makes sense. I mean, I'm kind of like you. If we keep going down the path that we're going, I mean, we're in trouble. I mean, we really are. And it's amazing that I'm just amazed that a lot of other people don't really see, and they still buy into this the government, and they buy into this whole system. It really does at times bother me, and it kind of surprises me because people will even I talk to, they'll say, "Yeah, I know government's got its problems and it's a little shady," and I'm like, "Wow, a little, anyways." But we still need them, and I mean, they think they can vote this problem away, and I'm like, this has never worked in history. I mean, open a history book. Voting has never made anything better, but they keep us in that box where we keep thinking, oh, we'll vote for this guy, it'll change it, vote for this, and not realizing. And I'm so glad that you brought up, James, that this is a spiritual battle. I've been saying that for a year, and it really gets people up in arms when you kind of say that, because a lot of people are, I don't believe in that, or I don't, they have all their excuses. And I've been saying it just like you did. We're in a spiritual battle. This is gonna, and we have to figure this out for ourselves. And this is a very crucial time. But a lot of people, they don't even want to. They can't. They don't want to look at it as a spiritual battle, and it's really, it's kind of shocks me. Does it shock you that they don't see it? Maybe you're not running into people that look at it that way, but for me, I am. That they kind of, when I bring up the whole spiritual part, they kind of really tune out in a lot of ways. Like they're like, I don't believe in that, or whatever their excuse me. But it's definitely a spiritual war that we're in right now.
This is how the religion of statism operates in a nutshell. The gist of it is that they subtract a person's ability to understand spirituality, and through that method, they open up the door to allow for their religion to take place.
Mm-hmm.
So that's how it's all built. They need people to not be able to understand spirituality in order for their ideology to take hold and to dig those talons in. So it's not surprising to me at all when people push back against the spiritual warfare aspect of what's really going on here, because they've been trained since they were little kids, and they don't even realize that the whole idea of spirituality has been sucked right out of them.
Good point.
In order to make it possible for them to subscribe to the religion of statism. That's why the majority of people, and even people that go to church, downright to it, they're fucking atheists.
Mm-hmm.
They don't believe in a higher power. They don't believe in any of that stuff. They don't understand it to be true. I would take somebody that believes in it. If you don't know it, if you don't understand it to be true, I would still take somebody that believes in it over somebody that's an atheist.
Right.
You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
All right. Because
Absolutely.
it's like at least you believe in something. You're not some nihilistic little prick who's willing to throw your neighbor, under the tracks of the tank that's coming down your street, just so you can get away. When when you just team up with them,
Yeah.
go down together. If that's the case, that's the case.
Absolutely. And it's great that you brought that up too. That we do have power. I'm like, this is great because I like talking about solutions as much as we expose a lot of what's going on, but solutions are a great thing to end with, I think. I'm glad that we're kind of touching about that. And you brought up that, they do pump in our heads that one person can't make a difference. So why even try? That's kind of where people are at. Like, and I've heard people say it to my face, and I used to say it, years ago. I would say, like, how does one person make a difference? I mean, I'm one person, and nobody, like, I can't do anything. But the way you summed it up is perfect. That one person can make a difference, absolutely. And it's usually the one person, if you look in history, there is one person that is one that starts and really makes a difference, and then people kind of get along behind them. So I mean, absolutely. And definitely the more that are doing this, it makes lighter work. Absolutely agree with that 100% too, James. So I'm glad that you brought that up because we can make a difference, and our words and our voice have power that we can stop this. It doesn't have to come to a violent end, the way that we're going, like a big war or something like that. Which, I mean, it looks like that's where we're heading right now. But I'm hoping that can be, we can do it with words, is what I'm trying to say. And I think people have to realize that they do have power in their voice. It's so important that people realize that and take that power back.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Well, to use the power that they already have.
Absolutely. Yep.
You know, instead of the idea of taking something back, it was only taken from you in your mind.
Right.
You still have it. You just need to unlock it. It's a hidden potential. You just need to just turn the fucking key already. Open the door for, just unlock that hidden potential.
Hmm.
And this is the whole thing is like we really we really need to get back to the basics and largely in society and realize the difference between right and wrong action and stand up when wrong action is being done around you to you. What when you see wrong action being done, stand up and say no. I'm not going to take this anymore. you know uh, and I'm not going to stand for this.
But the
And,
problem, James, is a lot of people don't even know what a right or a wrong really is. That's what we're
yeah,
dealing with.
yeah, exactly why I say we need to bring it back to the basics
Yeah.
and relearn that. And that is part of the makeup of the key is learning right from wrong, and then using your free will, your own ability to choose what you're doing with your body, your spirit, the animating principle of who you are. It's like, and using that to stand up and say no, even if it means costing me my life. I will not tolerate this. And we need to speak. We need to speak to, as much as as much as it might be painful.
Hmm.
And we need to speak to people that we dislike, people like police officers and stuff like that. they
Yeah.
they they are human beings. They're not very good humans. But they're still human beings, and they deserve at least a chance, in my opinion. I don't want to derail the conversation and start talking about that, but like that's just maybe for next time we can talk about that. But
Oh, for
you
sure. Yeah.
but everybody has ev- everybody has a redemption arc, including the most evil among us. They deserve at least one chance to to stop doing what they're doing. And if it's like, okay, we gave you that chance, all right, and you didn't listen, so now we have to defend ourselves against you, you know?
Yeah.
And that's what we're trying to do here, trying to speak to people to raise awareness of this situation that's really happening, and try to peacefully avoid
Yeah.
what might be coming down the
That's
pike.
yeah, that's what I worry about too, is what might be coming down. And I mean, my ass got woke up 2 years ago, and I can't say because I'll be on YouTube. I can't really talk about too openly, but I think people know what I'm talking about. What the pandemic, I guess I could say. I think that's okay to say. That's what really kicked me in the ass when I saw how quickly people went along with that, and I was like, wow, like the mind control is thick, really thick. That's kind of like what really gave me the kick in the ass that I needed. I just saw how quickly people fell for it and how they've really got their claws into people. And people are just so easily led. And I think it's important what we're talking about, that people have to start educating themselves and learn what a right and a wrong is, and learn objective morality, and learn that there is such a thing as truth. And these are just things, and it's so common sense to me when you kind of think about it. It's like, like we should all know this and be living by this, but people make all these excuses and justifications for their actions.
Mhm.
And that's what drives me crazy, is that they will just justify it away, or that they have no choice, or that they have to do this. And I just think that's such a cheap excuse. I mean, it just really is, because you're just justifying wrong actions. And so I just hope that people, they're listening to this, maybe if they haven't looked into these things that we're talking about and that James has brought up, that they start looking into it. Just to end this, because I don't want to keep you too much longer. I thank you so much, James, for taking the time. It's late where I know it's late for you, so I don't want to keep you too much longer. But maybe we could wrap it up. Can you give any suggestions for people that maybe haven't looked into these topics that we're talking about, some people they could look into that would get them on the right path and going down the right road of looking into this information?
I would definitely start looking into the work of Richard Grove, and definitely start looking into the work of Mark Passio. You know, these are a couple of names that have been a major influence in my ability to put things together in a sound way, and actually to, you know, initiate me into, like, you know, taking action and actually putting the knowledge into action.
Yep.
And so that's a couple of people. You know, Richard Grove is a forensic historian, and he's been putting out content for about 15 years, since like 2006. He's been putting out content, and he's excellent. And he has Grand Theft World, and he has another podcast called Peace Revolution, and he has another, I think it's tragedyandhope.org or .com. I can't remember off the top of my head, but he's on the One Great Work Network. I would suggest starting there.
That's a great place. Yeah.
He and I would suggest to go to the One Great Work Network and to start perusing through the content creators that are there and finding the style that grooves with where you're at in your own spiritual journey, or your own understanding of history and what got us to where we're at, you know, and where we might be going. And
there's like 60 over 65 now, I think, on the One Great Work Network, last I heard.
Yeah, I think it's about almost 70, to be honest.
Wow. Yeah, it's
You
growing.
know, which is cool, you know.
Yeah.
And then I think that you know, it really just depends. I mean, that's where I would turn people's attention to, is definitely give some attention to Mark and Richard, and then start branching out into, you know, other people's podcasts and stuff like that. Like I would definitely start there.
Cool. And yeah, I agree. And I'll make sure I leave a link, guys, in the description for the One Great Work Network, of course. And also to wrap up, James, let everybody know about what you're working on, where they can find your work, all that good stuff. I want to give you the floor for the last couple of minutes just to let everybody know where they can find the great work that you're doing and information that you're putting out there.
Okay. I'll start by saying thank you very, very much, Rick, for having me this evening. It's been an absolute pleasure, and it just feels like two friends having a phone call.
Yeah.
It doesn't even feel like we're doing a podcast, because we're only now recording, but this is like maybe conversation number 5 or 6 that we've had.
Yep.
But and it just feels like two buddies talking a bunch. So I really appreciate the easygoing setting that you've created with your show. It's great. And I appreciate the work that you do, and thank you for having me here. So yeah, my name is James Cordiner, and I have a little website called freeyourmindne.com. That's the home base. It's Free Your Mind New England, and because that's where I'm from. If you couldn't tell, I don't think I have too much of an accent, but I'm sure it's peeking through every now and again. But yeah, and I have a podcast. It's called A Hitchhiker's Guide to Truth, and you know, we've been going strong for, I started podcasting back in 2019, and I started podcasting with the idea of discussing and exploring ideas of spirituality, consciousness, and you know, freedom, and it's just developed from there. And I broadcast just about every Saturday night at 9 p.m. Eastern time, and you can catch the show at freeyourmindne.com. You can catch it live anywhere, like YouTube, Odyssey, any of these platforms. Just type in A Hitchhiker's Guide to Truth, and my channel will pop up.
Yeah.
I've tested it. Tried
exactly.
it. So, I mean, it's very simple, very easy. And if you want to reach out to me, go to my website, and there's a contact form that you can fill out on the contact page, and we can have a conversation of our own, and we can continue on doing this work in the technological space. So, you know, and I just want to leave your audience with the same encouragement that I leave my own audience every week, if I could.
Yes.
So it's a very tumultuous situation that we're in when it comes to the grand scheme of things with how the world is kind of turning out to be. It's very important for each and every one of us to get back to the basics of learning the differences between right and wrong action and choosing with our free will to do the right action simply because it's the right thing to do, not because you're expecting some reward or a pat on the back or an attaboy. It's because it's just the right thing to do. Thank you for having me, Rick.
You're very welcome, James. Thank you, and you're welcome back anytime, my friend. Anytime. If I'd love to get you back on and do a part 2 and continue this conversation because I'm really enjoying it, and I could go another 2 hours talking to you because I really do enjoy your insight and your knowledge and what you share. So you're always welcome back, my friend.
Thank you. And you know what? We're gonna get you on a Hitchhiker's Guide to Truth soon. I got a couple of openings. I got a couple of openings coming up in March.
Cool.
And I think that we can can maybe do part 2 on my show.
Sure.
And, oh, and one other thing to everybody out there, start speaking up.
Absolutely. Yeah.
When you see it going down, start speaking up.
Yep.
It's not gonna change if you don't change it.
That's so true. Yeah. All right. Well, there you go. That's a great way to end the show, guys. And like I said, thank you, James. And I will keep in touch, my friend. So keep doing the great work and doing what you do because you're getting the message out there and you're doing some great stuff. So keep it up, my friend.
You too, Rick.
All right. Take care, my friend.
You too, bud.
Well, there you have it, everyone. I hope you enjoyed that conversation. Please check out the links below. I'm going to leave all the links to James's channel so you can check out his work. You can go check out his live show that he does, his live broadcast once a week. Great information there. He's got great guests coming on, and there's a lot to learn there. And we're all learning. We're all learning. I mean, I'm still learning. I learned from James. I learned from a lot of people. From all different sources. I really do like learning from a lot of different people, and I seem to learn better that way. I do have a couple of people that I prefer to learn from. I just seem the energy-wise, it just seems to be there. And then there's some people that you can't learn from very well. You don't sync up. And that's what is great, is that you can find somebody, whether you go to the One Great Work Network, as we said, there's like almost 70 amazing content creators there that are doing incredible work. You're going to find somebody on there that you click with. So, go check it out. I'll leave a link in the description. And, I mean, I just hope that I can get James back on here again and to continue this conversation because, as James said, we've talked a few times, like 3 or 4 times, not, in the interview setting like this, just talking. And it's an amazing conversation, and I do learn just by having these discussions. And I just agree with James that we have to take our power back and start using our voice and realizing that one person can make a difference. They really can. And the more people doing this in their own unique way, it doesn't have to necessarily be a podcast. You don't have to be maybe on camera, but there's many different ways you can do that. You can do it, start a newsletter, start, like James said, going into your, setting up a meeting in your local community. Get out there and start meeting people. That's what I love doing. I really like going out and talking to people in person, and I guess that's just because I'm old school maybe in a way, and that's the way I prefer doing things. Totally love the technical side of this and the technology side of it. I'm still learning it, but I do love this. It made this interview happen with James, so it's got a great thing, and you can use it for good. They're definitely using it for evil means against us and mind controlling and the horrible things that they are using. These dark psychologists, they are using tech against us, so we have to use it against them. And so learn at least the basics of tech. Learn the basics. I mean, you don't got to put a big production on. You could do an interview on your phone. You could do a podcast now on your phone. You really can, even if it's just audio, and get the message out there. As James said, many hands make a light work, and that is a great, and that's a great way to look at it. So you can do something, and everybody's good at something. I always say that everybody is good at something. You are good at something, and you can maybe incorporate that, whether it's art, whether it's dance, writing, name it. If you can do that and do the good work and the great work in your own unique way, that is what's going to matter. And the more people that are starting to use their voice and saying they've had enough, I mean, people have to start saying they've had enough, because if we keep letting them take and take, they're just going to keep taking, and they never give it back. Once the government or the powers to be, whatever you want to call them, the powers that should not be is what I should say, they never give it back. So we got to stop giving it to them, and we got to start putting our voice out there. So that's just my little thing I like to say at the end. Also, I'd like to let everyone know, if you do enjoy radio, don't forget that I am over at Revolution Radio 3 days a week. So just go to freedomslips.com. I'll leave a link in the description once again. And I'm on Friday nights in the Hawk's Nest. I'm usually on about 8:30. Nick and go usually 3 hours. It's kind of up in the air how long I go for, but I definitely usually go a couple hours. And then I'm also on Saturday evenings in Studio B with my co-host Jonathan Wright for the Crypt, Rick, and Jonathan show. We are on Saturday evening, 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, Studio B. And then I also have my other show, Crypt, Rick's I've Been Thinking. That's on Mondays, Studio A, 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time also. Lots of great stuff going on there. We have great guests on every week, talk about these important topics that James and I were talking about, and we have great information coming out and just a lot of amazing guests. So if you do like radio, like that kind of format, please check it out, guys. Thank you so much. I just want to take this last minute to thank each and every one of you that tune in here, watch my interviews, and support what I do. You guys mean the world to me. You really do. And it shows that you care what's going on in the world when you come here and listen to my guests, listen to what we have to say, and just, even give your input and your thoughts. I really can't thank you guys enough for the support that you guys show. It's incredible. And I really do enjoy doing this. I enjoy the interviewing, the people I get on, and learning from them, and learning from everyone. I really do enjoy that. So thank you so much for your support. It means the world to me. And, thank you. And I will be back. Got lots of other great interviews coming up. I've got a few already done, so I'm going to be releasing them shortly, along with this one. And I got a lot of great stuff lined up in the new year here, guys. Got some great interviews coming up. I'm super excited. I don't want to say anything right yet, because I want to make sure that they're, done before I say anything. And then once the interviews are in the can and they're done and I got them on the recorded, then I will kind of put hints out to who it's going to be with. But I'm really excited because I'm going to have some really cool guests on very soon. So I'm looking forward to that. It's going to be a great year, 2023. Let's make this the year that we get, you get your word out there. You get your message out there. You take stand now. You take a stand and start getting the information that that you've taken in and you got inside you. You know what's going on in the world. You know what's truly going on, and how, you have to start putting your word out there, whatever way works best for you. But definitely make 2023 that year, because we need more warriors out there doing the great work. So take care, guys. Stay safe. I'll be back real soon with another great interview. Take care, guys.
Are you interested in the paranormal? Murder mysteries, cryptocurrency, and thought-provoking interviews? Then check out Crypt, Rick's I've Been Thinking on YouTube, or every Monday night at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Studio A at Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com. Welcome to the Crypt.